but it's in the chat right now. It's called purpleair.com, so you can check air quality today before you go outside and do something. What's the threshold for don't go outside?
I think like we've been at 107, 120. I think anywhere up in the upper 120s to close to 150 I've seen is
bad. Okay, so we're at 57 right now. So there you go. All right, roll call, please. Helen, there she is.
Mr. Carlton.
Here.
Mr. Bergeron.
here.
Ms. Owens.
Here.
Mr. Kuhn.
Here.
Ms. Giello.
Here.
Mayor Mamula.
Agenda, Rick, any additions, changes?
No additions. I do have several just follow-up items for the council at the end of our agenda to go over under other.
Excellent. Any new business you want to start with, or you want to go right to the discussion items?
Right to the discussion, and I'm going to start off the first item.
Okay.
I want to talk about a housing proposal that's in front of the Housing Committee right now. So the Housing Committee has been vetting a proposal that came to us unsolicited by a private developer in town. Traditional neighborhood builders, David O'Neill's organization, obviously built a Wellington, Lincoln Park for us, Peak One neighborhood in Frisco, but we're looking at a 18-unit micro unit studio project. The Housing Committee is excited about this concept. It's something that we've been talking about for a while because, can we build some less expensive micro units that are pretty minimal? These are at 250 square foot with a upper loft area for sleeping that's not counted as part of the square foot, but that's relatively small. It's probably the size of a full-size bed or something up there. And in addition, we're looking to possibly have built-in Murphy beds into these units, but that's not part of the original proposal, but we are looking at that. So anyways, these are 250 square foot micro units. There would be 18 of them. Based on what you see in the packet, they would be located on a parcel of land that the town owns. It's part of our full rec center parcel, and it abuts up against those townhomes at the southern edge of the rec center property. It would be between the driveway access and the mobile home park, that side. There's already 2 townhomes that were recently built in the last, 10 to 15 years after that original project was done. We would be right next to those, and we would go out into and capture some, land that's currently not being used as part of that town property, and kind of redesign that roundabout area where people enter and exit out of the southern edge of the rec center. We would use shared parking with the southern edge of the rec center. We would actually pick up about 8 additional spots by removing part of that roundabout access. And then the other part would be shared with the rec center at the southern edge. We don't feel that's problematic. Rarely is that full at the southern edge, except for under normal summers when there may be several softball games going on or something like that. But usually there's parking somewhere on that parking lot. So we, under this proposal, it was looked at 2 ways. Originally it was presented that, we donate the land under a long-term lease and the private developer would build and operate this as workforce housing. The Housing Committee and staff vetted that proposal, and we leaned and are recommending that we own it. So we hire traditional neighborhood builders to come in and build it for us in a design build concept. And we are the owner and manager of that property. We feel that under that model, we can deliver a much less expensive rental property to our community, because we don't need to make a return on our investment. We don't need to make a profit. We get money to build these housing units, and So we suspect under the model that's being proposed, we could rent these units probably in the neighborhood of $500 to $600. Really what we're trying to cover is maintenance costs, future capital reserves, et cetera, management costs is all that we need to cover with these units. So, you saw some early pictures in there, and nothing super fancy. They're nice looking units. They got good window exposure, looking out to the southern exposure. We would, Dick is on the housing committee. Dick really pushing to try to make this net zero. So we've asked the builder to look at what it would take to try to offset the proposed energy use, probably just do electric like we're doing on Alta Verde, and see if we could line that, that southern part of the gable roofing with enough solar that we could offset the use on site. But it's designed right now to look like it'd be really compatible, and that particular location has great exposure. So we're got our fingers crossed on that. All right. What I want to do, so this is really a case of the town hiring a contractor to do a piece of work for us. So there's not an official council action that needs to occur, but I'm not going to do this without you guys being supportive. So what I want to do is, have you give me a thumbs up that you're, number one, that you support the project and the recommendation of the housing committee. And you can ask Dick or Jeffrey any questions about this. And then there's a letter of intent that we want to enter into, assuming that you're supportive. So I would be signing the letter of intent. And then the next thing that we would do is start to actually sit down and hammer out an actual construction contract, a design build contract with the developer as we're proceeding forward. There's a very, very accelerated time frame on this. David has a project that has been approved in Steamboat that I believe is going to be similar to Wellington and Peak One, and it's 400 plus housing units that he'll be starting to work on next spring. And so he has the time now and the desire that he thinks as long as we can follow this time schedule, he can have these things. Well, originally he said delivered by January, but I'm going to say early spring. But, we want to be in the ground November 1 working. So,
Yeah,
questions?
Good job, Rick. Couple things to add. I think David's really motivated. I think this is a model that he really wants to try this, and then hopefully sell it to other communities. It's one that I've wanted to try for a long time, the micro units, and just kind of see how it works. For me, this is a perfect opportunity because it's an infill lot. I mean, this is 0.1 acres. It's great utilization of an infill lot, shared parking. We're not putting any more asphalt down. And I think there's a great opportunity to be net zero. So,
Hey, Dick, are these similar to what David did in Frisco? And if so, how similar?
no, I don't think so. I'm not totally familiar with what he did in Frisco, but I think these are the first micro units he's done. I could be wrong. I'm not sure if he did any over there.
Well, he did something over at Base Camp.
They are similar, Eric. Yeah.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah.
Is there an opportunity for us to go over and look at those? Well, does David have a model we could, individually stop by and look at? Could you check into that?
David's on. You want to ask David? He's an attendee.
Sure.
Chris, can you pull David O'Neill in as a panelist?
Rick, while he's coming in, can I just ask you, when you said the Murphy beds, the way they're designed right now, the beds are upstairs, then are you thinking the Murphy beds would be on the main floor, or you'd put a Murphy bed in the upstairs?
No, I think that it's laid out perfect. There's a wall, a window on it, and that would be perfect if we could design it with an actual Murphy bed constructed into the design of the wall. And we had talked to David about, and he was looking at that, so.
You could use the
It would be the lower level. I'm sorry, yes.
but then you could use the loft for storage.
You could use it for storage. You could use it for a separate sleeping area if you had a guest over, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's something, you have to climb a ladder to get to the loft. You saw that probably in that picture, right? So not everybody's gonna be able to do that.
We'll need some ADA units also.
Yeah, there is some.
Yeah,
proposed
maybe-
on the lower level.
Yeah.
Maybe a blend of both.
Well, two things. One, I think that I see the Murphy bed, and is the Murphy bed like a trundle bed? Is that the, kind of folds up?
Pulls
Yeah.
down the wall.
I see the Murphy bed as just, as a ad hoc guest over and not living there situation at 250 square feet. But one of these things that I'm sold about these units, they have a massive amount of storage built in. So actually the storage space is really almost adequate for a home much larger. And any of us that lived in small places alone in the olden days, this thing is pretty deluxe compared to some of the single wide, half of a single wide that I lived in. So
I lived in some dumps too.
yeah. So
Good morning, David. How are you?
Morning, nice to see everybody.
Thanks for
Virtually.
Hey, David, we couple of questions for you. How close are these to what you build in Frisco at Base Camp?
They're very similar, Eric, with the exception of instead of having the ground levels very similar, but instead of having a second floor as we had at Base Camp, we just have a loft for the bed.
Okay. Is there an opportunity for the council to individually see do you have a unit over there that's open to view?
I don't. I just sold the last unit. We could try to figure something out, I think. I've got some great photographs, which we can send you at the end of this meeting. We'll give you an idea of it. We've learned a lot. Can I give you the 30-second, Eric?
30 seconds.
Basically, we think we've done a reasonable job creating a sense of community and place in the Wellington neighborhood. And for years, we've been thinking about how do you get down to 60% AMI and create the same sense of community and place. So we spent a year traveling around the country visiting manufacturing plants with our whole design team. And then while that was going on, we were building base camp shops and residences. Some things we did very well there. Some things were done very poorly. And so we've learned quite a bit from that. And so that's what you're seeing in front of you here. We're very excited about it. And I think, Jeffrey, thank you for your kind words. And Dick, I think completely nailed it. We're trying to create something that we can replicate in other jurisdictions. So we've given it a lot of thought. We're looking forward to working with you guys and staff to come up with something that works really well.
David, are these pre-built houses? Are they pre-built units?
What we're doing, Dennis, that's a little bit unusual that we learned through a whole process. As you learned, you started out your last project with it was designed for stick built, and then you switched to modular and then kind of went back. We're designing these so you can do either. And so the dimensions are such that you can put 3 of these, on one floor that would go through a factory and they'll fit on a trailer and be shipped out here. But at the same time, they can be stick built. And so the schedule we've been sharing with Rick provides on October 1st, we'll make a decision. Are we going to stick built? Are we going to go modular? Our preference is to go, and I think staff's too, to see if we can make the modular work, just to get the experience with that. But we'll have prices on both. And then at the last minute, make a decision on which is the best way to go.
Thank you.
There was a question about washer dryers, and I know we're not putting them in the units. Will there be something in a common room?
With only 18 units, Eric, there is not. It's your building. If you said no, let's do one unit that has that in there, we could do it. The whole idea of using these kind of infill sites is you have all the town amenities within walking distance.
But there isn't laundry in walking distance, is there?
No.
I'm not aware. I think that would be very, as somebody who currently is using coin-operated laundry, that would shave off so many car trips, and even the need for a car if you had like a laundry room on site.
I agree. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just said there's a trade-off, right? So we'd have to give up a living unit.
I think it might be. I think because you're right, everything is in close proximity. You don't need a car to live here. And I think it's fantastic. I think this whole project is great. We should do more. This is awesome. But it's that one component that you would have to have a car. Like it's very hard to ride a bike with your laundry. I know it's doable, but I think that would make a lot of difference if there was, you know, if we do sacrifice one unit or something to have laundry on site.
Aaron, you know what we could do is just, I'm sorry.
There's a river and a bunch of rocks very close by.
You know what, and I would not disagree with Aaron if we were in the same room, but I for me, that's low priority. I think if you're getting a place for $500, $600 a month, it's, you know, it's not a big deal to take a hockey bag on the bus and go to the laundry. If we could do it without you know, losing a unit, I'm all for it, depending on the cost. But I think if it came to a trade-off of losing a unit and having a laundry, like at Gold Camp, there was a laundry for the whole building, but that was like, you know, for each building there was a laundry, or each 2 buildings, and there'd be like, you know, 40, 50 units using that one laundry room. I think it's overkill to have 18 units using, you know, one laundry room for 18 units.
It's definitely something we could talk about as we get into the plan. So for everybody watching, Chris Liberto just put up the one of the pages from our packet so you can get an idea of what these things look like. They, you know, they're small. They look like they're going to have a great feel. So
You want a 10-second tour of the unit, Eric?
yeah, please. Do you? Who has the cursor? I guess Shannon could probably walk you through it.
Well, the first thing I'd point out is that wall on the right bottom is an opaque wall, just so you can see in it. That would be a solid wall in the field, okay? You see what I'm talking about?
Yep.
And one of the coolest things about this whole thing is where you see the ladder. The ladder's a ship's ladder. I mean, we'll design a really cool ladder. And then there's a railing the ladder sits on. That railing goes along in front of the loft. And then in front of it goes above the kitchen where you've got that storage area. And then it also wraps around to the windows. So you can move that ladder anywhere you want in the unit. You can move it, you know, above the kitchen so you have storage. You can move it in front so you can open the second floor windows. So that'll be cool. And then on the first floor,
David,
Eric, I'm sorry?
can you strap that ladder up against the ceiling or something to get it completely out of the way?
We hadn't thought about that. Well, Ronnie Pelucio is listening to this meeting, and so he can add that to his notes. He's the architect, and we'll take a look at that. Aaron will also take a look at just what a laundry unit would look like in one unit, so you can decide whether you want to give up a unit for the laundry or not. But anyway, the ladder is a central thing. And then the main floor, Eric, is almost identical to what we did at Base Camp Shops and Residences. Everybody loves the floor plan. That has been fantastic. I think they like everything with one exception, and that is we had some sound issues. And so in this case, we'll be doing double walls, and they'll have a 60 STC, so it'll be very soundproof. So the floor plan's tried and true. We love it. The loft idea, we've been researching that. We think people like that. There's enough headroom for somebody to sit up. So that's it. It's very straightforward. It's everything you need and nothing you don't.
That's great. Thanks, David. Other questions for David?
Yeah, what is behind, is that the hot water cooler? Sorry, hot water heater. What's on the other side of that wall by the
Just
bed?
utilities, so it'd be hot water heater and any other utilities you need. One thing we've learned, Aaron, it's really important, you know, the natural tendency is to say, let's have a central boiler or something, but we want to get each unit plug and play. So if at 2 in the morning, you have a failure, instead of the boiler failing for the whole building, you have one unit loses, you know, one component.
Hey, David, question on Kingdom Drive. It could have just been the rendering, but on one of those renderings, it looked like we would lose part of Kingdom Drive. That's not accurate, is it?
What you'll lose is part of right now the road goes around the roundabout there. You'll lose half of that. And so the building will connect right to that little island, and the road now will go around by the ball fields.
Got,
Should
you're
be-
not, it won't be split. Understood.
Correct. And you're going to see, we just submitted last night, we are rolling, and we just submitted last night the, I don't know if it was a Class A, which application was, but we just submitted to planning the application. There's a detailed site plan on that, Dennis. I'll shoot that to you later today so you can see what we're thinking.
Yeah, thank you. Well,
Now, are there planned for bike storage or any other type of storage, or is it just?
Aaron, I'm so glad you asked. If you look at the unit, you'll see the unit has a ton of, it's got the cabinets on the right by that opaque wall. And then above the kitchen sink, you've got more storage, but then at ground level, we'll have a 4 by 5 foot storage locker for skis, all sorts of gear. So there'll be tons of storage.
Nice.
If we do get around to using a unit for a laundry, we could possibly do some lockers too. If, as we're going through this, we feel that's a necessity.
Where is the trash enclosure going to be for this development?
That's on the site plan. And so I would defer to, once you see the site plan, because what you're looking at here is a very schematic drawing. What was submitted last night is, very detailed, addressing all the requirements of the code.
Okay.
David, I'm assuming we'll have a couple of ADA units in here. How do those flesh out?
If you really want to get into it, Ron, you can click Ronnie in, but the first floor are all going to be handicapped accessible.
Okay. So the loft will be something else.
We'll have to figure something out in terms of the trundle bed in those cases, obviously.
Very good. Other questions?
Somebody made a comment to me over text that there's also potentially the option, as we further the conversation with laundry, that there could be a European model where you have a washer and dryer in one.
I sent David a text about that same thing. So
I think that's a great idea. I've used those. They're kind of, they're a spiritual experience, but we'll investigate that.
We can talk more. When I was a bachelor, I had one of those washer and dryers that actually you connected it to the hose in your sink, in your kitchen sink. We didn't have a dryer. We just had a washer that did that, and it worked great. And it was like $300. So for another 300 times 18, you could provide everyone with one of those and that would save us a unit.
Was that a hand crank unit?
No, it worked great.
Washboard? Is that what you're talking about? A washboard?
No, it was you put a little.
Back to the river and the rock, Jeffrey.
We'll talk about it later.
all right. So
David, thank you.
any other questions?
No.
We're excited, Eric. We've been working with you guys for 20 years. You've got a great staff, a great council. So we're gonna give it our all.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Question, Rick, about sizing and our code. We're gonna potentially have to
So
change this.
right now, our code doesn't recognize a housing unit that is less than 350 square feet. So we're bringing you an emergency ordinance on the 25th that will amend the code and under certain conditions related to only workforce housing is the only time we want housing. Am I correct, Tim?
Tim, you're on mute.
Yes.
Dick and I actually talked yesterday about potentially linking it also to either AMI, which I don't love, or some kind of rent cap for a unit of that size to really, really restrict it. I worry that if we link it to AMI or workforce housing, there'll be some way to work around that as opposed to saying, it's $500 a month rent with a CPI or something like that.
Yeah, I have concerns. I don't want to just open the floodgates and let down our criteria for livable units, workforce or not. So I feel like these are, but if we change the code and the criteria without some kind of rent cap or some kind of, rent control, to me, this is an experiment. I'm confident it'll work. I really like it, but let's make sure it works before we really open the floodgates on changing our, because that size unit per bedroom is a livability, measure, and I think it's super important. So I'm totally with Eric. I hope that we can either set a $600 cap for units that are this small of a per month rent, or and then have a CPI escalator on it or something, or some kind of 60% or less AMI. The mechanics of that will be the smarter people.
Must be tied to being a worker in the community. One of my fears, Dick, is that you could build a ton of these and then rent them out for that's a great Saturday getaway from Denver.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You need to make sure that, and that just exacerbates any kind of parking problems, because you could put so many more people on a piece of land. Yeah, Rick. Yeah,
Well, there's two ways to handle this. Number one, if you want to wait and see whether these size units work, you can build this under a town project without it meeting code. You know that. You guys don't like to do it, but you can do it. So, you're creating emergency ordinances so that you stay within code, because right now it's going to be hard to assess points in that, because it doesn't really even classify as a unit. So there's a good chance you could go negative with this particular one. The other thing is that just make it, there's so many, I do not like putting dollar figures and things in the code, because things change and then you got to go in and adjust the code. And if you have so many conditions that are important to you for this type of project, maybe it has to be an approved project by the town council in order to have housing units that are less than 350 square feet. So, and then you do it on a case-by-case basis. You're approving that. And would that be in the form of, I don't know if it'd be in the form of a development agreement, Tim, or if it would be.
Yeah, I'm concerned about just giving for the development code to not have any standards for the council to review to determine whether a smaller unit is acceptable. That makes me uncomfortable. If it's a town project, that's one thing, of course. But if you're going to amend this so that the new rule, whatever it turns out to be, is available to all developers in the community, I'm not comfortable with just simply saying you can't build it unless the council approves it without some standards for the council to apply.
Yeah. My problem with the AMI is we're always a little shocked at how expensive stuff is with the AMI. And that's always my problem with this thing. And I'd rather, I don't know how we can link it to area rents maybe, or I'm sure there's something we can come up with. We always talk about AMI, and then it turns out that rent's $2,500 a month, and that's not what this is about. This is, we need to maybe what we should do is what Rick suggests. Let's go ahead and start going down this path and slowly work through some kind of new formula that we can link that, maybe it's a percentage of AMI, or I don't know, something, but the AMI thing always in the end is a disappointment.
Maybe we could just put a range in there, like 40 to 60% AMI. No, it's really low, and give us a range to consider down the road. I don't know.
We got to consider what the private development community is going to want to do with these things. That's what we don't want to do is get a bunch of these things. All of a sudden, this becomes a hot commodity, and we get some of these built, and then they're $1,500 a month. That we just don't. That does not solve any issues for us. These have to be ridiculously cheap. That's really what these need.
Eric, at staff level, we've been working on an ordinance that would create a new kind of development under the development code, which would be a micro unit, with a minimum square footage of 250 square feet, but it also has the same deed restrictions as far as who can occupy that micro unit as any other employee housing unit in the town. We think we've got that covered. We struggled a little bit yesterday trying to figure out the very issue you're focused on. Do we put a monthly rental rate in there or some sort of an AMI cap? But we can continue to work on this.
I'm in favor of Dick, Eric, and Tim let's move forward with the proposal. We can work on the details later.
Yeah,
So
let's-
you
how's
guys
everyone-
would be okay if this doesn't pass points then, right now?
Yes, I am.
I am.
Everybody heard that? It's recorded? Okay. good.
Yeah.
All right.
But it
What
is
other-
really, the net zero is really important to me. I'm glad that Dick brought that up, and I hope that we, do everything we can to get it there.
I think
I
we'll be able
agree.
to. And one other piece I'd like for all of us to think about, and we can talk about later. We don't need to figure it out now, but how do we want to lease these? Do we do master leases for businesses to do this? This might be a great place to dabble with some of that as well. Do we want to restrict a certain percentage of these for critical workers to the community, like daycare, teachers, first responders? This might be a chance to kind of dabble in some of that stuff. We're not going to figure that out today, but I just throw it out for everybody to think about. We can talk later.
Dick, while you're saying that, the other thing we need to be just cognizant of is how this affects, how this will affect the code vis-a-vis a developer building a large project that needs housing, and then saying, well, I'm going to offer you guys, 20 units, and they're going to be like your 250-foot units. And that may be perfectly okay. We just need to make sure that once we get this in code, that they tie in together, either by size or by number of units, or whatever our definition of this micro unit needs to also fit into that housing requirement for a development project. So
Yeah, we need to be careful there too of how that can be taken advantage of. I think that we should, that's another conversation.
I think that what Eric's talking to, I think when we recently amended that, it's tied to square footage. So they have to build X square footage.
Okay.
great. Everybody good with the fill-in hands? Or everybody good with the, not fill-in, letter of intent?
Yes.
All right.
Everybody's good with just doing this as a town project to start working on the 250 square code as we go?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, one other question while David's on there. David, do these have crawl spaces or basements?
No. Right now, we anticipate it'll be, given the fact that it's being built on the, the river rock, we're anticipating a shallow foundation system with a crawl space similar to what we've got at Wellington, actually.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Other questions for David or staff? Okay, David, thanks for joining us this morning. Thanks for bringing this to us. It's great.
Rick, thanks so much for all your hard work on this. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, our next item today is COVID-related survey and focus group results. Back to COVID. Woohoo!
Yeah, we gave you a brief break there for a while to talk about something normal. Yeah.
We have Lucy Kay and Tessa from the BTO joining us now.
So Lucy and Tessa are going to kind of go over, I think most of you're aware over, I don't even know how long we've been working on all this, but at council's direction, you wanted us to go out and start getting an understanding of what fall and winter might look like, what businesses we're anticipating, thinking about, where BTO, where the town might assist them, so, similar to how we assisted in the summer, because winter is going to be a different animal for us, and we wanted to get a jump on that. And so, BTO designed the surveys and then focus groups. And so Lucy and Tessa are going to give you a brief summary of what's in your packet on the information that we gleaned from that. And then Shannon will kind of help lead a discussion relative to how do we proceed based on that information that we have. Thanks.
Sorry. Morning, everybody. What I thought I would do today to just be most efficient with your time, you have the survey in the packet, obviously, and the whole first part of the survey where we were talking to the 86 businesses who responded about the extended main, walkable main. You all have made that decision, so I'm just going to skip right over that and move to the comment part of it. So you all know we had almost 450 comments on the survey, which is pretty astounding. And in order to make some sense of it and distill it down into a page or two, we cross-tabbed it. So for every single question that we asked, for which there were comments, we have the responses organized by industry type. So all the retailers together, all the restaurants together. And in that way, we were able to really get to the common theme. So I feel good that this 2-page summary does accurately reflect just an absolute ocean of comments. And certainly if any of you want to see all of that organized, I give you that detail. But the overriding issue across, all the different communication channels that we're using, but certainly in these comments, was safety is the priority, and people really are supportive of the mask ordinances and all the things that we've done, and hope that those things will stay in place. And I will say that we also just are beginning to get back our Breckenridge traveler sentiment, so our past guest traveler sentiment, and the same thing, that's the first thing that they care about, and they're saying they would feel safe coming to Breckenridge. So the word is out there on the safety thing. So that stays in place. The resort opening is a huge question for all of us, certainly. Then we get to business sustainability. And no surprise, we want to stay open at all costs. And I'll call out Toby's comment. If we did have outbreaks or incidents, hotspots within the community, we should try to do smart closures rather than a massive closure. So avoiding those complete closures at all costs. We want to keep the comments for keeping the expanded outdoor space with tents and heaters, an idea of no parking on one side of Main to maybe expand sidewalks on one side. We're looking at Main one way, Ridge the other. Shannon is going to have some overlap with this from the resiliency task force group as well. Pickup zones was another main theme. If we can have either one area that is a designated pickup zone, or just really coordinating those kinds of things. Keeping the relaxed signage and display codes in place. Along with that, having more consistent signage. I think the consistency relative to the mask ordinance and social distancing, those kinds of things, perhaps more electronic signs. A lot of comments around elevating the non-ski activities, using underutilized resources, facilities, so the ice rink, rec center. This one actually dovetails really nicely with a long-term challenge we've had of not having enough activities for teens and kids. So we can solve two concerns with a set of solutions here. We talked about a year-long snow castle, similar to the snow fort that's at Keystone. A lot of comments around employees, perhaps casting a wider net for employee recruiting. I'll call out, I thought was interesting. A lot of comments on marketing, and as always, it really a wide array of comments. But the more common themes were around theme weeks or theme months as we go into the fall and winter, doing smaller scale events to keep people coming, and a lot of comments about doing more local marketing for local businesses. When we asked the question about what else town can do, and this is true at the state level too, financial assistance, whether it's rent assistance or any of those kinds of things, PPE procurement, locals parking came up quite a lot, more public restrooms came up a lot. And again, that solves multiple concerns, and getting the bars open. One comment that I think sums up everything of the 450 comments we had. The solution here is going to be a lot of little things, not a silver bullet. And I think that's really the answer. So Tessa and I are here to answer questions about the survey, or Tessa, certainly throw in if you want to add something, or we can just combine this with Shannon's document, which is a little more specific.
No, I would just add we were really, really pleased with the sample that we got back and the representation among the different industries and different businesses. So big thanks to the business community for providing us that feedback.
Hey, Lucy, I would like to start out with a question. Under business sustainability on 1 and 2, consider eliminating parking on one side of Main, or consider one-way Main, one-way Ridge. Were they talking about summertime only? Were they talking about going into the fall? and
This was for
extending to
fall.
September?
The question was geared towards going into fall and winter.
Thank you.
Other
In
question?
thinking, yeah, I have a question, but it's much too specific for where we are now, but I'm just wondering if we can get there. The bar and restaurant opening, or I guess keeping the restaurants open. I'm just curious if we have any information on air filtration or any systems that are out there that are working.
One thing I could add, I can't fully answer your question, Kelly, but I will be on a call Friday with the Colorado Restaurant Association and the governor's office. And those are some of the things they'll be talking about, like what the restaurant industry as a whole needs to stay viable. So that's part of that discussion. So I'll have some feedback next week.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Lucy.
So I have another specific question. With the relaxation of the sign code and sandwich board signs and snow plowing, Rick, Shannon, what are your thoughts with how that could work out?
Well, we can talk about individual things right now, or we get into categorizing these things, which is what we want to do. We would have to have very specific rules around sandwich board signs and how they're used in the winter in order to make it so that we can work around that for snow and ice cleaning, etc. But it's doable. But if people abuse it, there'll be an issue, and we'll have to deal with it. So, yeah.
All right.
So, anything else for Lucy or Tessa? Because now, what Shannon wants to do, she's kind of taken some of this information and lumped it into like categories. So we kind of want to deal with each of these categories, and I'll let Shannon kick it off here. So.
Thanks, Rick. Sorry, just answering a question on mask compliance. So what this memo does is takes basically the information that Lori and Lucy and Tessa pulled together from the surveys and the focus groups, adds in what we've discussed in the resiliency committee, as well as a little subgroup that we've had going, kind of talking about if things get worse, what can we do to try to keep businesses up and open and keep the town vibrant. Also kind of wondering, because we don't know yet, at what capacity the ski area might be open. So, assuming it's not going to be 100%, that it could be 70%, but it could be 30%. So what do we do to keep people coming to town? So what I've done is I tried to take all of that information and split it up into different kind of like categories. And we can do this a couple of ways. We can run through all of them if you'd like, or I can run through those that I think really need some council input. There are several in there that can be done outside of the operation of the town, and that like the theme months, as we started off with theme weeks, we've kind of moved to more like theme months. I don't know that really needs a lot of council direction on that. We've got a nice little group working on ideas for that, and that's probably one they can run with. But when we talk about utilizing town property, like parking spaces, or other initiatives that are, they're going to have a cost associated or a staff resource association, those are the things we'd really like to get your feedback on. So I can run through those particular items, or we can run through these each one at a time. Eric, what do you think?
Why don't you run through the ones that you need some council input on, really? I think that's the critical part today.
Okay, we'll start with those, and then I can certainly answer any questions on the others. So the first one is the pickup parking spaces. And I think Lucy commented the idea of parking individual places where people can stop to pick up items, whether that's retail or restaurant items, whatever that might be, but taking up some parking spaces so that people can swing in and pick up their takeout. And we know that takeout even now is a really big component of what is happening with restaurants in particular. So we want to keep that going in the wintertime. There is the idea, or had been floated the idea about kind of a one-stop shop for people to pick up. I don't think, and Lucy can correct me on this, I don't think we've come up with a really good solution for that particular idea. You know, we certainly thought about using the Riverwalk as a pickup location, but that requires runners to get product to the Riverwalk, which in the winter has its own set of challenges. So I guess it would be my suggestion we kind of table the idea of a one particular location for pickup, and really focus on this idea of selecting parking spaces that we would designate for people to come in and pick up their orders. We would obviously lose some spaces, so there's a revenue loss there. There would likely be at least some expense in that we'd want to create signs and a way to clearly identify the spaces that are available for this purpose. Rick has thrown out the idea that we caveat it by saying you can't leave your car unattended. So, you know, someone would pull in to pick up and then a runner would run something out to the car, or you could get a second passenger, the passenger could run in and pick it up. So that's kind of where we're going with that. I think we have a really good team that can work on this between Matthew Culver and our Public Works folks and our Breck Park folks. And this seemed to have some pretty good legs from the restaurant and retail community. So if council is good with this idea, we'd like to get started on it sooner than later.
How's everybody feel about this? Questions or just everybody?
I have a comment with this situation. I think it's great. I think that it's important to communicate with businesses that they must have a process to have online or by phone pay beforehand, and there's a way to just easily pick up whatever you're buying. A couple months ago, I called in for pickup just to avoid, you know, being inside a restaurant and waiting in line and all that good stuff. And then I was still waiting in line, you know, and so I think that's really, I think across the board, whether they are participating in this parking spot or not, I think that's really a good practice for businesses to prepare for the winter. But yeah, definitely with this pickup spot, that it needs to be easy. Yep. My name's on the bag, I can grab it and go because I've already paid for it.
Aaron, I think most places are doing it. One of the problems, though, just so everybody understands, there's a thing called PCI compliance that all of us in business have to. Well, you got to fill out these forms. You got to go on and get a certificate, and it's about credit card safety. One of the things that generally you're not allowed to do is take credit card numbers over the phone. Now, I think things have been fairly lax because of COVID, but just so you know, there's definitely an issue with PCI compliance and taking a credit card without, you know, it's the whole reason for the chip. The reason for the chip is nobody ever touches your credit card. Nobody ever gets your number. It is definitely one of those things that, you know, if somebody says, I'm not doing it because I don't want to be out of compliance, then we cannot tell them they have to do it. So,
but then they can have a runner who brings it out to the car and swipes it right at the car. So it has to go.
If they have the technology and if they have the wireless capability outside of their business to have a card reader. There's a lot of tiny little pieces in these things that are expensive for businesses to do. And, you know, Dick and I know this because we've done all these little pieces in order to make our businesses work. But we also run larger, we run larger businesses. Some of the smaller guys will have difficulties for these things. I don't want to make this mandatory for anybody to do because it does, you know, there probably is a bit of legality to it. So
is it, Eric, the same rules apply to online or just the phone?
It's totally different, but that's another whole.
Yeah, no, I know that, but just, yeah.
Okay. There's a lot more options online. You can find secure partners that make it PCI compliant, but you've got to pick the right people. I'm totally with Eric. I hear where you're coming from, Aaron, but I do not think this is something we can mandate. I think one way we encourage it is what Shannon and Rick are talking about, is say at the pickup locations, you cannot leave your vehicle unattended. I think that's a great idea because there's just so much opportunity for abuse with these pickup areas, and that defeats the purpose of everything if people are parking there for 15 minutes or a half an hour. So no, I think it's great. I appreciate all the work on it.
I think the first step for the staff to do is to really figure out how many places don't have a current place for pickup and delivery. You know, there's a lot of places that have alley access that, you know, it's not truly parking. You know, this is not something we necessarily want to put right on Main Street if you can help it. I'd say Main Street would be the last resort for these. You know, for instance, the 100 block has a huge parking and alley behind. If you can sign the delivery zone in that area, that solves the 100, you know, the 100 Southwest block. If you have similar things like that throughout town, we can designate those areas first, and then we can go and find those little clusters where we need to do 1 or 2 parking spaces on Ridge and Main to allow these things to happen. You know, you can think of all the places, Fatty's, for instance, that's going to need something like this. You know, so Fatty's Angels Hollow could potentially have something close by that's potentially a delivery zone, you know, already. So,
Well, and perhaps a centralized website to order food, whether it is delivery or it's pickup, that could be a way that the town helps restaurants that are not wanting to do the online orders. That could be a service that could help.
Shannon, I'm in favor of staff moving forward with this. I think it's a great start.
You know, Aaron, down those lines, and maybe this is more in Lucy's wheelhouse, but anything we can do to push. I mean, many of us are doing order online for takeout, and for me anyway, the capacity issues happen when we get people involved. You know, if I'm trying to answer the phone and take orders and put them in, and you know, all of that, it bogs down immediately, and it's a cost of having lots of staff. So I think there's a large number of restaurants, and I'm guessing retail as well, that have the capability of order online, pay online, all done, and then they just come out and we can do curbside pickup for them. Any help in pushing guests towards our websites, individual websites for all the retail restaurant businesses. And, you know, first thing you want, you know, maybe tell our guests, first thing you want to do is go on the business website and see if you can order online. Because that accomplishes what you're talking about, Aaron, and it really helps the business. So,
well, and if we do it for delivery already, I mean, maybe it's just a choice of, do you want it delivered or do you want to pick it up? And it's, I don't know, it could be useful and convenient for people.
You know, I'm in favor of staff moving forward on this, but also I just want to kind of reiterate what I said a couple meetings ago. I would like a centralized website that from the, you know, town of Breckenridge website, that any restaurant could put on a link and say, well, you want the, you know, Italian food, whatever, seafood, you know, sushi, and then you could click on it, and that would go right to their website, their link. I worry that some of these smaller, more obscure places might just not have the exposure that some of the larger places on Main Street has, and I'd like to, you know, kind of keep them in the loop so that visitors can access some of these smaller places that are kind of off the beaten path.
yeah, and I think in the end, Jeffrey, that's the way to do it, is you link to their website. The problem with an online ordering platform is every restaurant uses a different point of sale system. There is no one bullet that can link with every POS.
Oh, yeah.
System. So there's 20 different point of sale systems. There's no online delivery system that can link to each one of those and make ordering seamless without going to a phone call.
Yeah.
You know, DoorDash, for instance, they call. They don't, you know, you call DoorDash or you go to their website and you order some, they then call the restaurant and order via phone, you know, so it's not, you can't, there's no link between what Dick uses, what Ken uses, you know, what Jay Beckerman uses, what I use, that one online ordering platform will work. So it really
you'll be linked into websites is what you end up doing.
linked to a website. So just so that the staff doesn't go down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out how to help everybody with online ordering. It doesn't.
Yeah, that's my suggestion, is that we just have a clearinghouse that can people, these are the restaurants in Breckenridge. If this interests you, click on this site and it'll go to their website, and then you can.
So this might be a good time for Tessa to take just a couple of minutes and tell you what BTO already has in place, because I think they've kind of already gone down that road, and you know, not that it couldn't use a little revamping and updating, but I think they've started down the path that you're suggesting.
Cool.
Tessa?
Yeah, there's a couple of different options. So one is the list that we currently have that is both guest and local facing. So it's on a couple of different locations, including the What to Know Before You Visit page on gobrec.com. In addition to the restaurant page, and those are linked both with phone number and the website. So as soon as you open that list, you can open any retailer or any restaurant in town. It'll link directly to their website. In addition to that, Google has also updated their capabilities throughout all of this, and delivery and carryout options are much easier to find on there now, and we're seeing that that's being very heavily used. So I'd say if there's places where you think people are falling through, or you're finding that guests aren't getting this information, we definitely want to fill those gaps. But I would say Google is definitely kind of picking up the majority of the slack, because that's where most people go to look kind of from the get-go. And so we do have it on, like I said, on gobrec.com and on onebreckenridge.com for the local facing as well. And of course, anybody who hasn't updated their Google My Business listing, please do.
So we're going to continue these conversations in the resiliency group and with the restaurant association and the retailers as well. We know that retail in particular in the past has not really had robust web presence or online presence, and so we're trying to work with them. Kathy Christina is doing a lot of work with them to try to boost that, so that if there comes a time where we have less capacity in our stores and restaurants, that those folks are ready to go to try to get their product out online. So we continue to work on that. Kind of moving on to the signage question. Certainly there is a lot of talk and a lot of requests for us to keep those relaxed restrictions on signage. In the same vein, I think it was Aaron who brought it up, we do have a concern about being able to plow and remove snow from our sidewalks. So I think what staff would recommend is that we take a hard look at what we can continue to do with our businesses and kind of what we'd have to pull back on, and likely sandwich board signs that are in other pieces of retail material that are in the space between the sidewalk and the road, you know, where the pavers are. We've allowed them to have items on those pavers. We wouldn't be able to do that anymore, so that we could clear snow and keep that open for people to walk. But there are a lot of other pieces of the sign code that you all have relaxed in that executive order that Rick signed that we could probably continue to do as long as you are okay with that.
Dennis, good. Aaron, good. Jeffrey, Kelly. Yeah, it looks like everybody's in favor, Shannon.
Great, thank you. So moving on to the outdoor winter activities, Lucy talked about quite a few of the ideas. This has kind of been the great part of getting all these groups together, is people have really kind of cool, interesting ideas of things that we can do to provide options for folks who either are not skiing, or if there's a reduction in the amount of days they can ski on their trip, that we're providing other opportunities for them. So in the memo, I listed out, 6 or 7 of those ideas. Scott Reed and his crew have brainstormed this as well and came up with a whole memo full of ideas. If we can certainly run through all of them, but I think this is one that we, maybe as staff, need to do kind of a deep dive into each individual idea and really determine the feasibility and the cost. None of these ideas come without a cost. And some of them, I think you'll see on the list, even say like the Winter Fat Bike Race Series, that might be something that there's a vendor in town, like a Westie or somebody that wants to take that on, or it's something we could run out of the rec center at probably a fairly low cost. So there's some things that maybe we would ask other entities to take on, or that we could do pretty low key, but others are going to require maybe some funding or some staff time. And I think we need to take a hard look at these, if you're game for us doing that, and come back to you kind of with a shortened list and a cost for what those activities would take to put on.
Questions? No, everybody good with that idea?
Just so everybody knows, BOSAC had a special meeting last week and we talked about some of these ideas, and they just brainstormed a ton of ideas, and it was really great to see the commission participating. And so I think we'll come out with some good options and some things that might stick past COVID.
I would like to, again, kind of suggest that we gear some of these activities towards the visitor, towards the entry-level visitor that we now see hiking 3 or 4 abreast on the B&B trail, families that are just trying to figure out what to do with their kids. I think, so just more of a user-friendly, entry-level type participant is my first concern, because that's the people that I'm seeing visiting and probably will be visiting, and will be doing more takeout, and it's our bread and butter in the short term.
Yeah, I think Tony said that, what was it? B&B Turks, Sally Barber were up 30 to 40% in the last couple months. So we're seeing an influx, at least in the summer, of users, and not knowing what the ski area will do, I think that we can predict that we'll see these user groups continuing to use the trails. And we really have to be mindful over, to Jeffrey's point, where are our locals going to go to, because they're also going to want to use our trail systems. And so to make sure that there's enough area for both, that there's enough for tourists, there's enough for locals.
Another thing I just thought of that we're really going to have to get some information out on is avalanche danger. There's going to be a ton more people going out in the backcountry skiing that don't necessarily do it all the time, that aren't necessarily as savvy as Jeffrey might be about what's safe and what's not. I don't know if that's something that we in the county can put together look, these places are generally safe, or if we need to stay. I don't know how we do, who can take that on.
And Eric, we talked a little bit about this, about perhaps more avalanche classes, and also designating trails to be, mostly safe, that, we're not taking on any kind of risk, but if you were to go out, this is where you should go. But I think we also have to be mindful of some of those trails and some of those areas are very well loved by our locals too. So then are you going to have both user groups in the same area, and then will they be loved to death? So there's a lot to think about with that. And I think we have to get our messaging just right for the BTO to get out there too, so that people have good, safe alternatives to the ski area if not everybody can get on.
I was
also,
about the locals and not about, the majority. I think there will be a ton of locals that don't normally skin that will be doing it. That's the group I'm really talking about. I don't know that our guests that don't do this are going to buy that kind of equipment for a week trip. I'm worried.
Coming up from Denver folder, you know?
Kelly,
Well,
I just think if we're going to do anything like that, it would be more appropriate to maybe partner with someone like Mountain Outfitters to lead some tours. I have an enormous amount of hesitancy in saying that anything in the backcountry is safer than any other place, because it depends on so much. I think that we would be really opening ourselves up to some legalities with putting out that kind of information.
well,
Yeah,
let's
and
CAIC on this, I think.
exactly. I think the natural partner is CAIC, and anywhere we can push out links to their website and their hotline phone number and really make that prominent. More classes is huge, because Eric's right. It's going to be our workforce. It's going to be our seasonal locals, you know, the people that have come up to work. And those are the guys that really don't know what they don't know. They don't know that they should be scared of some of this stuff, and they're just out, you know, ripping it up. And so CAIC is a natural partner in this, I think.
And you know, and I'll just say, yeah, public information or you know, instruction is great. It takes you 5 years of at least to learn your way around and know what suspect. So that there again, I don't think we can, you know, the locals either will take the initiative and do a classes or whatnot to keep themselves safe, or they won't. And then the same thing could be said by the visitors. I only know one trail that I would recommend, you know, it's in our trail system that we sign, and that's the Wire Patch Trail. That goes across the Wire Patch, that slides, you know, pretty regularly, and that is a trail that's signed. But other than that, I think it's, you know, pretty much what our user group will be is cross-country skiing, snowshoeing on places that aren't suspect. And as far as the locals, I think it has to be take it upon themselves to learn their way around and to avail themselves to CAIC and the various classes they can take.
We just need to push the information out, because, you know, Jeffrey, when I was, you know, in my 20s, I was a complete knucklehead about these kind of things. I skied stuff that I never should have, you know, and I think we just need to not necessarily tell people you can ski here, you can't ski here, but, you know, these are the dangers. I think Dick's totally right. We need to get with CAIC that the information campaign needs to be much bigger. And it's really, it's people like myself that are downhill skiers that went out at the end of last year and bought skinning gear and started skinning.
Yeah.
And I'm, you know, sure, people have a certain amount of responsibility to take care of themselves, etc. It's a drain on our resources countywide if the county rescue teams are constantly in the backcountry digging people out because they're too boneheaded or they didn't know or whatever. We need to just make sure that we have made every effort we can to keep people as safe as we possibly can as the town's government. So that's really what I'm driving at.
Absolutely. I don't think we should get beyond where we are. Like I think Colorado Adventure Guides could also be a great partner in this. I do think that we'll see people from the Front Range also getting involved in this. And I don't want to stay silent on it. And I want to make sure that people have the resources and some good ideas, because I'm afraid that if they don't have the information, if they have zero information, we just say it's up to you, that they'll make some bad decisions. And then you're right, Eric, our resources will go to that. And then things could get shut down for everybody, which again, I know that's not what, we don't want to be in that place again.
We have a chance here to partner with the ski area and the CAIC, because in the past, the Breckenridge Ski Patrol has done classes on backcountry safety, and they're the right people to be doing it with the CAIC. I'm in agreement.
So we can kind of hit this from two sides. One, we can talk about doing some education, whether that is for Front Range folks that are coming here to backcountry ski, or our own folks that are looking for some alternatives. What Scott had recommended, you know, we have areas that we are already grooming, and they're probably not well known to our guests. So having some kind of education, information, marketing around these places that we already groom, you know, the Gold Run Nordic Center, the Rec Path, things that are pretty easy for guests who aren't used to being at altitude and whatnot to actually be able to go out there and have a good time and not feel like they are going to die. One of the other suggestions was McCain, maybe getting out there and grooming some of McCain, which is pretty flat, you know, offering opportunities for people that doesn't necessarily get them out in the backcountry. So we'll kind of hit that from two sides, and we'll get working on it. So thank you very much for all that feedback. The next,
Anna?
yes, Rick? Yes.
I'd like to just hear a little bit from the council if they think it. We had a few comments about outdoor ice skating. And, you know, years ago, way before my time, apparently they used to ice skate on Maggie Pond. People suggested we should bring that back as an outdoor activity. I think that's probably got a lot of issues we have to navigate around because there's a lot of ownerships related to that. You know, do we look for another area, or do we concentrate more on our outdoor rink we have at the rec center? I mean, at the ice rink, and maybe make sure that's open more to public skating or something. I don't know. I mean, we have a great facility. I don't know how much effort and time we should put into trying to make another outdoor ice skating facility or location.
One other thing to add is that we do have the area at Gold Run Nordic Center that's been ice skating in the past, and that is one of the suggestions that Scott has come up with, is that we could allow ice skating, and I think he called it broomstick,
Broomball.
something
Ball.
hockey type out there as well.
I think we should approach, not to run it ourselves, but I think we should approach the Village HOA about, you know, they used to have a whole skate rental shop. They had the whole deal for years. Glenn used to, in the springtime, drive their plow truck into the thing, and it would sink in the lake every year as part of the.
Where would they park if we did something at the Maggie Pond again?
You know, I don't know. I mean,
I think it's a walk up. I mean, that's core of town. So
Yeah.
and
I like the Gold Run Nordic Center idea. Get more people out there, and that could just be a flooded situation that, you know, just plow it and flood it as opposed to really trying to run a Zamboni on it kind of thing.
Oh yeah. I think they actually, if Reed's on the line, what did they? I think they shoveled it back when Zeke Sededlak ran Gold Run. I don't know how they cleared it. I could be mistaken.
Hey, Dick, to your point, I don't think we've talked enough yet about what we could do out at the golf course for winter activities. I really think that the town has a opportunity to create a tubing hill experience. We need snow, what doesn't come without cost, but we need snowmaking, we need grooming, we need water. And those are something that we all have, but with Scott Reed's help, we might be able to find the perfect opportunity for a tubing hill experience, just like Frisco has. That is not only a moneymaker, but we have parking at the golf course. So.
And Dennis, this came up at BOSAC. It's a little complicated with the grass and the I'm not a golfer, but I guess there's some concerns with how that will affect the course itself, but it is on the list and for those reasons, because of the parking and for the accessibility and that sort of thing. But I think there's a bit of a conflict with the grass and things. And Scott, I'm sure, can speak better to that.
To the rest of your point, Dennis, I think, you know, and BOSAC did talk about this, and I think Scott will weigh in. I think the Gold Run Nordic Center is an untapped amenity, and the only thing lacking is exposure, you know, advertising and whatnot, but certainly transportation out there. And both of those things were spoken about at the BOSAC special meeting. But yeah, I think, you know, the Gold Run, I think, is a gem that is unexplored. And I think with the help of Scott Reed in his one-piece suit, that will kind of get the exposure we need.
Hoodoo voodoo.
Oh, jeez.
Scott, can you weigh in?
Sure. A couple things. Certainly, the transportation element that Jeffrey just spoke of was a big conversation point with BOSAC, and trying to get more people out to the Gold Run Nordic Center. Like you said, we do have parking, but getting people there on a regular basis would be helpful. I have spoken with Jim Byers, who is the superintendent of the golf course, and he thinks there are some opportunities to get a smaller sledding hill out there that would not affect the turf. Again, sort of as I discussed with Rick and others, all these things require some resources, and we just kind of need to strike that right balance of providing those opportunities and amenities without, sort of breaking the bank or spending way too much money on that. But we feel like, we agree that the idea that Gold Run Nordic Center is a functional facility that we can certainly maximize the use of in circumstances like these and try to diversify. With regard to the pond out there, it has been shoveled in years past. The challenge we've had, certain years ice is better than others, certainly, so we can shovel and snow blow to make it work. Broom ball is a lot easier to accommodate out there than skating, because we don't have a fleet of skates separate from our ice rink that can be utilized out there. That's one of the hurdles that we have. The other thing I would just mention is that we have already looked at sort of doubling the fleet we have of fat bikes and snowshoes so that we can provide more opportunities for people that, is pretty low level, don't really need a ton of experience to succeed in either one of those sports. Certainly also the rental fleet of Nordic skis as well could be expanded, but those two, being snowshoes and fat bikes, are ones that seem to be pretty low hanging fruit with regard to getting people outside and socially distanced without a ton of experience or knowledge necessarily.
Thanks, Scott.
Hey, another thing that we talked about at the Gold Run Nordic Center was some sort of soup or something in the evening, some sort of beverage or food item that could make that, or at least hot chocolate, that they could come out in the evening, snowshoe or whatever, or in the afternoon, and have something to hang out inside at the clubhouse and have some sort of food or something. Gene does an amazing job, amazing business with that at the Breck Nordic Center. And I just think that I just think people don't know about the Gold Run Nordic Center. We have plenty of parking. It is a beautiful facility, and we just, hopefully this winter we can capitalize on a little bit.
Yeah.
And Scott, I had one more question on the outdoor. What's the use of the ice rink? If we directed people to the outdoor ice rink, would that really kind of throw a wrench in the works of some of these local hockey leagues and stuff?
Not necessarily. We had already adjusted our budget to think that we were going to open the outdoor ice sheet later than usual this year, in part to, kind of from budgetary considerations. We had aimed for November 1st as an opening date. That's typically when the demand is there from Summit Youth Hockey, which is our largest patron, if you will. So we can certainly we can open it earlier. In the past, we've opened it at the 1st of September would be potentially a target. It costs roughly $5,000 a month to keep that ice cold and running. So yes, we can either adjust the hours of the indoor sheet so we have more access to it, or potentially open the outdoor sheet earlier. Again, September 1 being potentially a target that would be an investment in keeping that sheet up and running, but we certainly can do that. And it would provide more opportunities for, both for Summit Youth Hockey, but also for a lot of the open ice that we have for, for the public in general.
In your experience in the public, when are the prime hours for like what we used to call all skate, just kind of open ice just to skate around? Is that during the day or in the evening?
It varies by the week, it varies by the, by the time of day and when people are here. In general, Saturdays are busy. And depending on if it's around Christmas, it's pretty much every day is busy. Right now, we are open 5 days a week. We are closed on Sundays and Wednesdays. So the first step towards providing more service there would be to go to a 7-day-a-week schedule. We could also expand the schedule. I think currently we're 11 to 7. And we could certainly, open earlier and run later as well. That does have some staffing considerations. But in general, it varies, and certainly our free skates are very popular times, and even this summer with reservation system and the like, it's still continuing to be popular. But as I said originally, we're trying to balance that demand from the public with not having, spending a ton of money on both the cost of maintaining the ice and then the staffing that goes with it.
Okay.
Hey, Scott, has there been any discussions with Summit Youth Hockey about, depending what happens with school, about sort of expanding or changing their hours of use? I know there are a lot of times that, they need the after school hours when the public wants to be on there. Have you started having any discussions if, school goes to, even the current schedule with a Wednesday that it seems like every kid will be off on Wednesday, if you can offer stuff during the day for some of those programs, sort of, backfill some of that time during the day?
Yes, we have had those conversations. They're like a lot of other parents around the county are kind of waiting for making decisions and what it's going to look like for their kids. And I think our role is to remain flexible and certainly address that need in the safest possible manner. To date, we've been certainly doing a lot of clinics. We have had no we've had no games or tournaments or leagues going, and that's intentional. We are stepping towards kind of a stick and puck, which is a step towards, kind of some pickup potentially in the coming months, depending how things go, and then ultimately some leagues. But as far as Summit Youth Hockey, yes, we are kind of working with them to see what their needs are and will be, depending on what the school district ultimately decides and what the demand looks like. We can certainly adjust accordingly.
Excellent.
Eric, their registration's open and they're encouraging, they're proceeding as we're full go with the season, et cetera. Summit Youth is. And, obviously it's, we're going to, I think that group is going to, work with Scott and his team to just evolve as best practices come to light. But there's a lot of leagues and tournaments and games and stuff going on at the rinks in Denver. And, there's a number of folks traveling down to Denver to play. So it's, there's more and more happening statewide. So, maybe we can learn from some of those guys.
As long as we're flexible, I think that's all that we can possibly do. And Scott and his team, if they stay flexible for scheduling, I think that's all we can ask.
They always are. I mean, I think the rink is a great partner with Summit Youth. That's ever evolving, and there's a long history of a great partnership there.
All right, you
Scott,
ready to move on?
I have one last question. Is there going to be reservations at all to serve
Kelly,
kids in
your
the
fiber is all frozen up.
We didn't hear any of that.
Aloe? The
I heard
leisure
something
pool,
about
is it going to
reservations.
go reservation? Yeah, for the leisure pool.
The leisure pool. So the leisure pool is not open yet. Yes, we are looking at step by step if there's a way to start doing classes, limited numbers with kids and families, I think. So yes, there will be, if and when that occurs, yes, that will be a reservation-based system to get people in. And as I said, we're kind of ratcheting it up, starting with classes, and then the idea of kind of walking in and deciding on a whim that you want to go and jump in the leisure pool and play around is really kind of off in the distance for us. At this point, yes, reservation systems and probably starting with sort of highly controlled classes and the like to meet that need, but not the kind of the classic idea of, hey, it's raining, so therefore we're going to go swimming this afternoon. That's probably a little ways off for us.
All right. Rick, what's next? Or Shannon? Huh?
Nobody can hear you.
Oh, who can hear me?
No, Shannon.
No, it's me.
Oh,
Little technical difficulties this morning. So I wanted to backtrack just a minute. We were talking about signs. I also wanted to mention tents. So we have prepared an FAQ that the BTO will get out once we finish this conversation today. But our plan, and I think you all know, we've been working with, ComDev's been working with Red, White, and Blue to come up with kind of some general guidelines for tents so businesses will understand what the requirements will be if they decide that's what they want to do. So the idea is that if there's a business that wants to put up a tent, obviously at this point we wouldn't have the opportunity to put that on public property, but they could do it on their private property. The Red, White, and Blue is willing to work with folks on that, and obviously there are concerns as far as snow load and wind, things like that, that people would need to be able to mitigate in order to have a tent up. But it's possible. So we would, ask them that they put it on an existing deck or patio or hard surface that's not in their parking area or driveway or walkway, but we could be flexible as we've been in the past with parking spaces if we need to be. They could also put it on a soft surface that isn't for snow storage and things like that. Anyway, so there are options for tents. So we'd like to get this out to folks. If you all are okay with the idea of having tents up, we would also open that opportunity for other non-restaurant businesses to be evaluated by ComDev based on, what their plan is. So I think like we've heard maybe some ski rental places maybe would like to have a tent in an area for ski rental and ski return outside so they don't have to have people inside of their shops. So that's one piece. And in the FAQ would be the tents, the signage, and then and also an opportunity for outdoor display of retail merchandise. That again would be a little bit more difficult, I think, even for retailers in the wintertime. But we just make sure we're accommodating sidewalks, snow plowing, pedestrian movement, and whatnot. So I just wanted to touch on that, and I know there's a question from a restaurateur that Eric wanted to answer as well.
I do. You mean George's, about exactly what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, George, I hope you heard that answer. So you'll be getting the FAQ. I think all of us are very supportive of whatever we can do to allow from the restaurant community to expand outside of their current indoor operations, as long as it's safe. What we can't have is, some rickety 10 by 10 Oktoberfest style tent collapsing and burying a bunch of guests. So, yeah, so that FAQ then that Shannon will send out, look for that. Phil at Aram is buying a couple of yurts. I know they're really expensive, but I think that's a great idea of a way to go about something that's functional, it's usable in the wintertime. There's always shoveling and plowing issues with all these things. So you'll need a good plan to bring to ComDev in order to get the okay from, both ComDev, the fire department, the building department. I'm sure it's, first time through is going to be difficult, but the town, it really wants to help everybody as much as possible, expand their footprint onto their own property if they can. So. Thanks for that question, George. That was a good one. I didn't know you could type so well.
I also just wanted to, one thing I want to get your feedback on is the one-way piece. But before we kind of finish off with that and open up to any questions, there are a couple of items on this list that would require the use of, say, a space like the Riverwalk Center. And I didn't necessarily want to get into the details of those things today because there's a lot of kind of competing interests for that space, including potential for childcare and things like that. So Matt Neufeld and I are going to talk probably next week as things start to flesh out a little bit more and come up with a plan or at least an idea of what the requested uses of the space are, and then look at a way of prioritizing those, and then also kind of having maybe a backup kind of phase plan. So if, say, childcare is the #1 priority, but then it turns out they don't need the space, that we've got another set of ideas ready to go so that we're not leaving that space unused. So I'd like to table those things until we have a little bit more information.
That's great.
Great. And so then the last thing I wanted to ask you about is the idea of the one-way Main, one-way Ridge Street. And this originally came up as a way to allow for more pedestrian space. And it's been done in some other places in the summer. Crested Butte is an example where they allowed for one-way traffic on Elk Avenue. We've talked about it with several different groups, and we've asked Public Works to take a look at it as well. You know, I think there's some pros and cons to it. I listed out in the memo some of the concerns that we heard at the last resiliency meeting. So I'd like to hear what you have for questions and then get your feedback on whether or not you think this is something we should continue to explore.
Shannon, I'd really like to hear you and Rick, what your ideas are on would it work?
So I'll start and Rick can chime in. I do have some safety concerns. It's just, you know, our Main Street is a little bit different than even a Crested Butte. We have a lot more traffic. We would want to make sure that our pedestrians are safe. There's, you know, a risk of slip and fall when it comes to the going from the sidewalk down to the roadway on that curbing. And then the only other thing, not only other thing, but the other primary concern I have is just potentially pushing traffic onto French. And Rick, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add.
No, I mean, if you all recall, we generally end up with a berm of some sort between the sidewalk and the roadway because people throughout the course of a day, as snow is falling, will shovel the area in front of their business. The town goes out and tries to do all of the main street work prior to, you know, early morning. But you end up with some berm because as people are constantly cleaning snow, they're only going to push it to that edge of the landscaped area. And so it makes it hard to navigate over that. So it would take a lot of resources to be on that constantly to keep that berm from building for that area that we wanted people to walk in out into the road. I do have a lot of issues about safety and that and how well we could maintain that. I do not want to deal with more slip and fall claims.
So Shannon, did I misunderstand you? So you're asking about one way on Main Street, one way on Ridge Street or French Street?
Ridge.
On Ridge. So the idea would be you'd go, probably go south on Main and then north on Ridge. But what we worry about is that it would push people up onto French because they don't want to deal with that kind of one-way situation.
You know what I worry about is, especially this winter, we're going to be doing a lot of takeout. If people are driving, you know, they say they order from whatever, pick a restaurant, that old Whale's Tail, and they're going to order there. And what's the name of it now?
Blue Stag.
Okay, Blue Stag. So they're going to go to Blue Stag, and they, oh, it's Blue Stag, you know, and they, whatever, and then they go by it. They go, oh, shoot, I'm going to have to make another lap. I just think, you know, with the parking we're losing with the parking garage, and also just the fact that people are going to be driving around not knowing where they're going, and they're not going to be able to see as well because of this snow and the, you know, the coverage. I mean, that's something I would try down the road once we have a parking garage, or not try it at all.
Yeah, I think this summer was tough on some of our neighborhoods on, you know, French, Harris High.
Yeah.
And you know, I think they're very much looking forward to getting Main Street back open to get a little relief from traffic. And if we did this, I'm uncomfortable doing it for all the reasons Rick and Shannon pointed out, as well as pressure on our neighborhoods.
Shannon, I had the experience of being in Crested Butte, and they did one-lane Main Street, but they allowed parking on both sides. And I'm not throwing Crested Butte under the bus, but it did not work. It didn't give them the desired effect that they were trying to go for. So I would have a hard time pushing one way and one way.
Hey, Dennis, they also don't have the traffic that we do. I was
You're right, Jeffrey, and it still didn't work.
You know, it didn't. you never really felt like you were in danger, but they don't have wreck traffic. So, this was just an idea to throw out because if you think back to our original thoughts on walkable Main, it started with making the sidewalk wider, giving people some room. So
I also think that Wendy brought this up at one of our meetings, but the side slope on the side of Main Street, I just think people are going to cluster onto the sidewalk anyway. So I think the benefits for spreading people out would be pretty small.
I think all those are all the concerns that when we originally talked about this, I have all those concerns too. I agree. I think one thing that is underutilized in the winter that maybe we need to have a discussion with the merchants that are adjacent to it is the Riverwalk. The Riverwalk really becomes like a tertiary access in the winter, even though we plow it. People just don't tend to gravitate towards it like they do in the summer. So maybe here's an opportunity to allow people, maybe we do some snow sculpture stuff. Maybe we can talk to those merchants that have access back there, like the Crown, for instance, and have them utilize that to move some of our pedestrian traffic, on the Riverwalk. So
you're talking about the whole alleyway, that whole stretch of the alley.
The alley part, the Riverwalk part is the alley is the alley. I don't like having people in that alley to begin with. It's really the Riverwalk itself. There's restaurants like Clint's and Patagonia and, all the way up to the French bakery. I think that is really underutilized in the winter. And, the original intent of the Riverwalk was most of the backs of those buildings will become secondary entrances. Unfortunately, over time, a lot of them just do not enter back doors. I think there's an opportunity for those merchants to be a little more welcoming through that back access, and maybe we can spread some people out that way.
How's the lighting back there? Would it help to have some sort of kind of Christmas lighting or something to kind of give it some animation, or is it already lit?
I think that's an issue, Jeffrey, and that's not a bad idea. Do some temporary kind of decorative lighting to help with the lighting and help draw back there. Because I agree with Eric, that's very underutilized.
I don't think the lighting's that bad either, though. And don't forget that the Blue River Plaza is, like a stadium once we get those Christmas lights on. Maybe we turn the lights on earlier this year, too.
Yeah.
Lights
I
go.
think just from Blue River Plaza South they could use some lighting that stretch.
You could
They could. And I think with the lighting, if that's like another attraction, if that's, like cookie crumbs back there, I think that's a great idea. And perhaps that's another good utilization for tents back there I completely agree that draw away from Main Street could be helpful for pedestrian traffic.
Okay, so for right now, we're okay with tabling this one way. We'll go back to normal street and let's look at trying to liven up the Riverwalk.
My feeling is we had really good success with it this summer. Let's give it back to the merchants for the winter.
And I just really want to shout out to the people on French Street that put up with the extra traffic this year, understood it was for the greater good, did not complain. There's a couple people that live up there that have been critical of some of the things we've done as far as how we've done parking in the past. All of them were very supportive and understanding of what we did on Walkable Main. And I really appreciate their buying into the philosophy of the greater good for the community. So thank you. If any of you are watching, we really do appreciate just that you put up with it for the summertime. So thanks. All right,
Okay, so I don't have any other items to specifically discuss with you, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Like Lucy said, this is a more detailed list than what she had in her memo, but it is not even nearly the level of detail that we've received from the folks that we've been having these conversations with. So there is more behind a lot of these ideas. And like I said before, we've had a great group of people brainstorming and coming up with the things that they think will work. And most are business and retail, restaurant, retail, and lodging folks. So it's a great group to be working with. But I'm happy to answer any other questions you have.
And we should all, none
Or
of us,
take any ideas.
none of us should be surprised when at the end of this coming winter, a bunch of people come and say, when are we closing Main Street again? I will guarantee you that I have been hearing a lot of chatter about, you know, well, next summer we need to put more plants out and some lights and hold on.
Hey, I have a question you probably won't be able to answer, Shannon, but hopefully we can, you know, just kind of put a bookmark in it. When are we going to know what the ski area might be looking like they're going to be doing? Is there any timeline on that when they might tell us what their plans are?
I'm going to
So-
kick that to Eric. Rick.
Eric and I have a call tomorrow with Rob Katz. So it'll be Eric, myself, Scott Vargo, and Elizabeth.
And-
8 o'clock tomorrow.
Hey, Rick, I think I heard it through the Colorado Restaurant Association, but I think Polis came out and said, I think he's going to wait like 60 days before he talks about capacities at the ski area. He wants to watch what the data does when the schools go back this fall and everything else. So I think it's going to be a while, but it'll be interesting what Rick and team find out with the ski, with Cal tomorrow.
I do not expect them to lay all their cards out on the table. I think, you know, nobody can anticipate what 60 days is going to look like from now, but I think the industry is probably in the ear of the state, and one of the clear messages we have heard is that every resort is different. So different that there is not some standard one-size-fits-all solution to the ski season, because everybody's ability to handle numbers, the capacities, the infrastructure, you know, those are the infrastructure is what's going to be, you know, the most problematic, I think, you know, the restaurants or restrooms, et cetera. There's a number that they know what that number is. And those of you that ski a lot also know if it's 8,000 on the mountain or 12,000 on the mountain, what do the lift lines look like? How do people disperse? What does it feel like up there? And they know what that is. So
I think our greater, well, not concern. We have a couple of things. Number one, just assume we're going to be at 50% capacity between retail and restaurant. So the ski area can't open full board because we can't even accommodate that kind of traffic in town. Aside from that, we need to concentrate on the things that we can do something about. People are still going to want to come here. I think we saw that this summer. They want to get out of their homes, whether it's the Front Range or Kansas or Texas. We need to make sure we're offering them every opportunity to come here and do some outdoor activities. That's why these other pieces that we talked about today are so important. You know, if you can get on the ski hill once or twice during your stay, but you can snowshoe one day, learn to cross-country ski and fat bike, and then take a walk through the woods, go see the troll and maybe some other art pieces. We could round out your vacation so you don't feel like, why did we go to Breckenridge? There was nothing to do. We couldn't ski and couldn't get in any restaurant because they're all at 50%. So that's why that piece is so critical to how we succeed going forward. The best vacation that we can give under these circumstances will put us ahead, you know, for the future. So
I couldn't agree more. I think it's really about how do we complement each other and what we're offering and what we're doing, which is the whole purpose for this meeting today, is to get your thumbs up so that we can start putting the resources and the timing and the planning together to be prepared to do exactly what Eric was talking about. So,
You know, and as far as complimenting each other, I want to just say, Rick, you look really good today.
thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Anyone?
All right. Any other questions about what we've talked about? Otherwise, I got a couple other matters, and you may have something too. But as far as winter activities and that, any additional questions?
now, you know, we need to help some of the businesses like Country Boy. You know, Mike's talking about doing some treasure hunt thing in the winter, snowshoe treasure hunt. So I did get a message from Graham Frank that their little skating rink is open in the wintertime after hours. Those parking spots are available. So there's a bunch of things that we need to push out. And when we're on our call tomorrow with the ski area, we need to talk to them about other opportunities too. You know, maybe they need to think about some night tubing or something up there also if they can. I don't know. We'll push that out.
Hey,
Also,
Eric, if you could talk to them, just throw it out there that they had that great space for Mountaintop Children's Museum that they used to they've let them use, you know, in the summer. It'd be great if they could use that in the winter. I don't know if they're going to be, or if they could use.
Ski area or Grand Timber? Whose space is it?
Well, it was the ski area space, and I don't know how it is with the hotel that's now in there, but you know, the ski area just might have another space for them, and that would be a huge thing for a licensed facility. They already have a license to deal with kids, and I think, you know, families with kids, they're the ones who are going to struggle the most with coming in here and figuring out what they're going to do. So they're still looking for a space. They're willing to staff it. They're really wanting to do something, but they don't have a big enough space. So if there's something they can do, I think that would be a huge, huge resource for the winter.
Okay.
something else that came up at BOSAC that people were adamant about that won't be surprising is daytime uphill skiing on the ski area. I know that they've said no in the past, but perhaps this could be a special year. And that could help with some of those avalanche risks as well.
I just got a text from Austin Deneen that said uphill access is a product, and I will bring that up with Rob and John tomorrow.
Awesome, thank you.
Maybe they can peel off a couple of runs and just say these are uphill access. It costs you $20 or $5, or I don't know. Maybe they can figure out a way to monetize it so it works for them. They could rent equipment, whatever. Great idea.
Yeah.
Buttermilk's been doing it for years, Eric.
Oh yeah. Lots of ski areas do it. I think and this could be the special year to do it. But yes, Dick's right. There are plenty of other places to look for that.
Absolutely. What else we got?
All right. We shared with you the press release that is going to go out today on Errol Miller's retirement. So just wanted you all to see it ahead of time and see if you had any questions before we release that to the public. Everybody good to go with it?
No, he's not allowed to retire. How about that?
We're going to miss him.
Man, how the years fly by.
Yeah.
There's a reason that our golf course is as highly regarded as it is, and that's Errol Miller.
Yeah.
It's a great facility, but he has done an unbelievable job out there with everything. He's been such a great contributor. We will miss him terribly.
Thank you, Errol.
I couldn't agree more, Eric, and I would just add, I also appreciate his dedication to our youth in golf. He's been great.
Jeffrey's a huge golfer. What do you think, Jeffrey?
Can a town council member still work as a golf pro?
No, but as a caddy.
You want to get elected, or do you want to be the pro?
Errol had a good gig.
The other thing, we had a request from the Summit Foundation to put the large inflatable duck down in the 400 block of South Main in the very southern end of the enclosure area for a 3-day period, I believe, towards the end of the month. Staff is okay with it. I just want to make sure you guys don't have any issues before we give the final sign off on that. All right.
It really is.
So you all got a note. I want to make sure you're aware of that second virtual town hall meeting the county wants to do on September 10th from 1 to 3. Some of you committed to going. If others can attend, I think the county would appreciate it. I think probably they'll follow suit, and it's just a a lot of updates on what's going on, what we've done, and maybe they'll have some additional direction as we move forward. We'll see. Did we send out, there was a request for a local photographer. It sounded like a good deal that wanted to push the mask thing and wanted to do a group photo or individual photos, right, Shannon, of the council in a mask downtown or something?
Yeah, I don't think we pushed that email out to you. We wanted to ask you if you were interested. So there's a fellow who's a professional photographer somewhere else, where I think he's from Texas maybe. And he's here and he's super impressed with everything that's going on here and has offered to take a photo or photos of council members wearing masks, and then he would give those photos to us to be able to use. So we wanted to know if you were interested in doing that. If you are, we'll get back to him right away and see kind of what he has in mind and what we could set up. But it might be a nice way to really promote kind of the stance you guys have taken on masks.
Awesome.
I forget what you guys look like anyhow. So.
Yeah, I'm in.
I look better with
Great.
it.
Mm-hmm.
So expect to hear probably something back from Peyton on that.
Yeah.
So I'm scheduling, we need to schedule the interviews at the very start of the work session on August the 25th, next Tuesday. We have 11 candidates to interview. You've had a chance, hopefully you've been reviewing their Q&A responses that were submitted to all of you. Your interviews would probably could be brief, and maybe they just involve some follow-up to the Q&A. In trying to figure out how much time we schedule, I don't want to cut you short, and I want to see what I was suggesting 5-minute interviews. It sounds like that's pretty short, but 5 minutes can be fairly quick too. I mean, gives you an ample time if you don't waste a lot of time.
Hey, Rick, I have a thought. Could we, I don't know if this is legal or not, but could we like vote via email and narrow it down to 3 or 4 people based on the questions they answered, and then have a little more time to do a little more in-depth interview with them? Could we go down that road for process, or what does everybody else think about that?
I guess, Rick, I would really enjoy 5 minutes with each of them, because some of these folks I really have no contact with. So I'd prefer to at least 5 minutes with each candidate.
And again, I'm loath to disagree with number 8, but I agree with you, Dick.
Kelly?
You guys can do whatever. I mean, I just want to throw out, you can do that if you want. We've implied to them that they would each be interviewed because we thought that was the direction the council wanted to go, but certainly that could change based on the Q&As.
I don't want to break our promises either, so whatever.
Yeah, I just feel like there are, first of all, I am super pleased with the applicants that we got. I think that, they all have super interesting backgrounds, and they answer questions in really insightful ways. For me, the public service that they've done in the community matters a lot. For me, I think it also really informs how they would be able to, perform in council. And so there are several people who I think rose to the top that I would be able to vote for, to do a more in-depth interview.
Hey, Rick, question for you. So we got to read bios, we got to read their questions and answers. However we choose to do the interview, are we voting at the end of that meeting, or are we going to have a special meeting to do that?
No, you'll vote at the night meeting on the 25th.
Got it. Thank you.
Aaron, what's your feeling?
I agree with Dick. I think that would be a good way to go about it. However, I would hate to go back on what we said, and I'd like to fulfill what we had promised. But yeah, I definitely see merit in going with the top few. I don't know if we want I think maybe if we could leave that option open if we wanted to talk to people a little bit more in depth after the work session, but that might take a lot of time too. So I think we should do what we said we would do.
I think the written portion really separated some candidates for me also, Kelly, for a number of reasons. But I at this point, we probably should just go ahead. We'll interview everybody for 5 minutes. What's our drop dead date for picking people, Rick?
Well, it's 60 days after.
End of July, right?
When was his last meeting? Was it July?
26.
8.
So you got until September to do it, but if you're not ready to vote and you want additional interviewing to go on or something, then that's a decision that you can make on Tuesday.
So let's do it that way. Let's go ahead and give everybody their 5 minutes. Bring questions ready based on their thing. Rick, if you can let the candidates know, they'll have like 30 seconds just to very briefly say, this is who I am, this is what I do. We've all seen their applications and their questions. We'll make that part pretty brief. Can ask them a handful of questions if we have any. And then when we get done with that, if you, by majority, do not feel comfortable yet making a decision, we can schedule either a vote for 3 or 4 and bring them back on, say, the 8th for a final round of interviews. Or if everybody feels comfortable in who they want to pick, we can just take care of it on the 25th.
Yep.
How's that sound?
Yeah.
Like it.
All right, Dick. Okay. All right.
So what I will do is I will have I'll have a sign that I can hold up that gives like 1 minute to go, and then when we're done. So I think we're going to hold everybody to the similar timelines, and that's how we'll keep it on track. And it'll start. We have a rather lengthy discussion that we need on the 25th relative to a proposed housing development, and not the one today, another one, a big one. And so we're going to, I'm going to allow at least an hour for that discussion, and then we'll have another hour's worth of normal activity we have to get through. So, we may be starting these around 3:30ish. I'll work that out yet this morning what that final time is, but it'll be a good, even with a little time in between, we're at hour 15, hour and 20 minutes just to get through the interview. So,
Boy, housing has really popped in the last few weeks.
well, we had some new leadership on the committee right now. Yeah. So,
Hey, is there a way for Chris Liberto to keep the candidates out of the Zoom while we're interviewing the candidates? Like we would normally do. You can't sit in there while somebody's answering.
the problem is they sign in as an attendee, but they can hear everything, and then he brings them over as a panelist. The only way to keep them, you can't freeze so that they can't hear anything as an attendee. I think, the challenge is if they trying to give them a time frame to sign in is going to slow up our process, waiting for somebody to access or sign in.
Right.
I think, what, they've answered their questions privately. You have that information because they get to hear how so-and-so might have answered something ahead of them. So be it this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just, I think, Eric, it would also be difficult just because people can call in and you would never know who was called in. What we can do is order them, whether, kind of a random order. We can pick their names out of a hat, assign them an order, and then have Chris bring them over and take them out as they're done. So you don't have all of them on the screen. You just have the one you're interviewing on the screen. So we'll come up with a process for that.
Pick the names out of the hat for the order so that there's no argument about so-and-so went before me because his name is
Yeah.
Jeffrey.
Yep.
the last heads up I'll give you is that the Great Divide Arts Festival is happening this late summer. They're over Labor Day weekend. This is the one that's held on private property at Main Street Station. It's been vetted by, go ahead, Shannon.
It's at CMC.
Where?
It's a parking lot at CMC.
Oh. there you
Was
go.
the last one, the August one was at Main Street Station Village area.
All right.
There you go.
I just wanted you to have a heads up about it in case you didn't see it in any of the event committee stuff. That's all I have.
We have another we even need a meeting next Tuesday, correct? Our regular meeting.
Yeah, we do, Jeffrey.
Okay.
A lot of government going on.
Should we just all stay on?
Carry your phone with you.
Hey, Shannon.
I like having these extra meetings for COVID. This way the 6-hour Zoom meetings for a council I don't think they work. I'd rather have these in 2-hour chunks every week.
It's not good for you.
Okay with everybody. I know it's a little harder on the staff, but I think it's just everybody can keep their attention a little bit better.
Every week or every other week?
Well, every week for a COVID call. You know, I mean, we have our normal meetings. The problem, Aaron, is if we just stick to our normal meeting schedule, those meetings from, whatever, 3 to 8 are, I think people tend to drift. That last one we had that was long, I think we started to really lose some effectiveness. So I like taking care of some COVID stuff on off weeks if we can.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you're
so I think,
COVID every other
Yeah.
week, regular week. So we have a meeting every week, but we're not having meetings and what?
No. A meeting every week, but try to handle the COVID business on the off week. If there is anything, and if there's not, we don't, then we don't have to do it. But I think just so we don't bog those meetings down. I mean, tomorrow I'm going from, 8 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon with Zoom meetings. I don't know how I'm gonna keep my brain intact. As you all know, these are much more difficult than live meetings. I mean, I like being able to look at you all in the face, which is different, but it is difficult not having a crowd. It's difficult, talking to a computer all the time. The more we can break these up, I think the better it is for everybody's attention span. Jeffrey.
Hey, Shannon, question. I think Kelly brought this up yesterday via email, but the Alta Verde public meeting, who is that for?
That's for the public.
Understood, but who's invited? Everyone?
Yeah, well, what we do is we push it out to the public, and staff puts it together along with the developer so that we can introduce the project. So we'll release it out via social media. Obviously, anybody from the council can show up to that if you want to hear public comments or concerns that may come up. So, we would do that. We'd go to the big room at the rec center and hold a public, outreach meeting on this development. It's a requirement of one of the grants, the block grants that we got. So,
Thanks, Rick.
All right, everybody good? Anything else? Once again, thank you to everybody that listened in this morning. We appreciate the massive attendance that we get with these meetings that we're doing. So thank you to the citizens of our town for being interested. And thanks for the great questions today. Hopefully we got everything answered, but if we didn't, you can always get to all of us through mayor@townofbreckenridge.com or go to the website www.townofbreckenridge.com. Have an awesome day, everyone. Thank you.
Peace out.
thanks.
Thank you.